Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Marty Ross, and welcome to another conversation with Marty Ross MD tonight. As you know, this is a webinar where we're going to discuss Lyme disease, and the whole discussion is based on your questions. So I am looking forward to seeing what you have in store for me tonight. For those of you that are coming back here again, I see a number of familiar names on my message board, and I'm glad to see that you're here and that you keep getting some value out of this. And for those of you that are new, welcome. There's a couple ways that all of you can participate. Number one, you could see the questions that other people have and how I respond to those. And if you're in the live version, you actually will see it. I mean, it gets posted on the screen. In the recorded version, though, I have to read it out loud. So I'll read those questions out loud. The second way that you can participate is to ask a question. And you can do that through the chat box on the bottom of your screen. The only thing I ask about those questions is try to keep them on the briefer side. Long questions don't work in this format. The second thing I want you to know about that too is even though you write a question, does not necessarily mean I'll be able to get to it. Usually there's more questions per night than I can get to, but I'll try to do the best job I can at trying to get through things. And as many of you know that have been here before, I usually use your question as a means of explaining things, trying to look beyond just what your question was, but to help figure out what kind of information it might help you in terms of improving from Lyme disease, okay? All right, hold on here a minute. I think I got something on my glasses. There we go. That should take care of that. So anyhow, that's how this is going to work tonight. And then I am creating a recording of tonight's event. And tomorrow morning, somewhere around, I always say 9 to 9:30 a.m., Pacific Standard Time, but then I'm usually a little bit later. Why don't we just say before, hopefully around 10 o'clock in the morning, Pacific Standard Time, we'll be able to get that recording email out to you. And in that recording email, I create a summary of what we talked about, as well as give you a link to sign up to next week's webinar and a link to look at the recording again on YouTube. And if you do look at it on YouTube, there's timestamps on YouTube that allow you to flip through the different topics that we talked about as well, too. Okay? So without any further ado, why don't we go ahead and get started here. Hello, Nuna. Let's see. In recent weeks, I experienced this on most days. Is it indicative of bacterial overgrowth or SIBO, bacterial infection, low stomach acid, histamine issues, or other? How to manage fix as it takes over my life. I'm woken up by tightening, wrangling feeling around stomach area. If I don't eat promptly, it gets stronger to point can't function. Also, it happened 6 times a day, forcing me to eat that often. I've tried making individual meal larger in volume. It didn't prevent recurrence. A few hours later, context, bad GI symptoms started March, worsened in May. Cut down food to only meat. Stool analysis in June showed marked dysbiosis, plus low bifido, need to support mucin layer. Took Flagyl, end of June. Some symptoms improved. Many continue. Pattern a cycle of 1 time a day low symptoms, several days high, few days very large, even if eat exact same thing. Then tried to reintroduce food, sparse success. Started probiotic metabolic daily, Sunfiber 2 weeks ago, soon to start Therabiotic. And Nuna, let's see here. Nuna, the rest of, and there's not enough here for me to answer that. Oh, wait, well, there's a second part. I don't know if this is a separate question or it's a continuation of that. Let's see, the Shoemaker protocol test for MARCoNS in nasal cavity, then if positive stipulates it must be, oh, all right, that's a separate question. No, with this kind of question, what's still happening with your gut, that is really going to be too complicated for me to figure out in this kind of a format. I would need to be able to do some give and take questioning of what's happening with you. That's something that you might want to consider scheduling an appointment with your provider to discuss a little bit further. It would take a little bit of a give and take discussion. Okay. All right. Good luck to you. Hello, Lynn. Let's see. Hi, Marty. I know you've answered the question about whether or not to get the COVID booster. I wanted to ask it specifically for a couple of older family members. One is an 82-year-old woman with a heart condition, and the other is a 78-year-old man with a heart condition and asthma. Both have been vaccinated before more than once, and neither has had COVID as far as they know. They are wondering about continuing to get vaccine at this point. Can you share your thoughts on this situation? So what I would say is it's a very individual decision, and they've got some things to consider. So generally, I think many of you know that during the early days of COVID, I did recommend that people get the new mRNA vaccines. And that was based upon the time that people were dropping dead right and left around us. And at that point, I thought the risk versus benefits of the vaccine outweighed not getting it, basically. In other words, I thought there was enough potential gain of keeping people alive that it made sense to go ahead and do the vaccine at that point. Subsequently, I think at this point, we now have some questions about the safety of the vaccine. And we actually have good data that says there may be some issues of heart conditions that can develop when you get the vaccine. And so I think now, and then on top of that, many of us have either been vaccinated or have had COVID. And even though this couple reports that they haven't had it, they may have even had it and didn't know it, all right? But a lot of us have some remaining degree of immunity from either having had the vaccine or having gotten COVID. And so at this point, I'm not recommending that people get the COVID vaccine because I think there are some safety issues around the vaccine. And I think there's enough community immunity in a sense, okay? Now, what I don't know from what you've just said here, I know you said heart condition. The heart condition for both of them would kind of steer me away from possibly doing a vaccine. But on the other hand, at 82 and 78, they may have other conditions that may make it so that if they got COVID, that it could hurt their heart. So this is the kind of condition that I would need to actually want to have an individual discussion with them and weigh out the risk, which is possibly some heart injury that can happen from the COVID versus COVID vaccine, that is, versus the possibility if they truly never have had COVID of getting some health issues and bad health issues that might develop from getting COVID. And so it's not a yes or no answer, unfortunately. All right. Good luck to you, Lynn. Thanks for bringing that question up. Hello, Nuna again. Let's see here. I think this is that other question I found. See, the Shoemaker protocol tests for MARCoNS in nasal cavity. Then if positive stipulates it must be eradicated in order to fix ongoing symptoms. What is your professional opinion on MARCoNS and if eradicating them is a must for someone who is experiencing unexplained chronic symptoms, odd sensitivities, assuming they already tested for environment and for Hertzsprung score is low? I've recently listened to podcasts of professionals with different opinions to increase the breadth of my knowledge and wanted to hear yours. Thank you again for your time and expertise, helping us understand better the world of complex chronic issues. All right. So, Dr. Shoemaker, I think on the one hand, I think he's a great guy. He is the one that discovered that we have this condition called mold toxicity, where 25% of us, due to probably a genetic predisposition, will, if we breathe in mold toxins from the world around us, those mold toxins get trapped in us, okay? Now, Dr. Shoemaker, basically with his theory, would put people on binders, and then if they didn't get better, he started wondering, well, maybe what else is keeping them sick, okay? And so he developed this whole elaborate theory of looking at other things that might keep them inflamed. And he developed this idea that maybe what it is that they have colonization with a germ in their nose called MARCoNS, which is methicillin-resistant coagulase negative staph. That's what MARCoNS stands for, right? And so he thought, since it was there, that maybe he should just do something to get rid of it. And maybe that was the thing that would get people well and keep them from being inflamed. Well, there's a couple problems with it. I've come to the opinion that I think it is just, in people that it's there is just an organism that we find that probably is not causing a problem. In the world of tick-borne infections, when I have taken steps to try to eradicate MARCoNS in my patients, I never really found any benefit to those patients by removing MARCoNS. And in addition, it's pretty much damn near impossible to keep from coming back. So once you get it cleared, it's probably going to come back. And so many of us started questioning whether Dr. Shoemaker is accurate, that getting rid of it makes a difference and that you can keep it gone. And I know Dr. Neil Nathan, for instance, who is a doctor that's really big in the mold space, shares my opinion in this, and that is that it's fruitless to go after it, and going after it makes any difference. Part of the problem with Dr. Shoemaker and his protocol, because when somebody doesn't get well by removing mold toxins, then he looks for MARCoNS, and there's a bunch of other things he looks at, is that he generally ignores the fact that people can remain ill because they have tick-borne infections. He just ignores. He doesn't believe in chronic Lyme disease causing ongoing inflammation, ongoing issues, basically. So I'm not a big believer in MARCoNS. I don't go after MARCoNS. I used to. I found it pretty fruitless in terms of helping people, and I found it fruitless often in being able to keep it permanently eradicated too. Okay? All right. Good luck to you. Hello, Chris. Says, hi, Dr. Ross. Some of my labs indicate low lipase. If I don't take a supplement, I suffer pain after eating anything fatty in a meal, besides no longer tolerating certain foods. I found a 2024 PubMed article, a case of Lyme-induced pancreatitis. I have never had these issues prior to ticks coming into my life. Have you seen pancreatic or enzyme issues of any of your patients? Hypothetically, do you think these issues could be caused directly by tick-borne infection, or more likely a symptom of overall inflammation stored within the body? So I haven't seen anyone in my practice that had pancreatitis caused by tick-borne infections. I'm not saying it couldn't happen. I just haven't seen it happen. I have seen situations where tick-borne infection would give liver inflammation, that it gave hepatitis, and which was, in that case, situation kind of hard to figure out, because when you have people on antibiotics and their liver gets inflamed, you have to start wondering, was the antibiotics? But we would stop the antibiotics in this patient and the inflammation wouldn't go down. And I finally just thought, I wonder if that this is chronic liver inflammation from Lyme. And I decided to push through with the antibiotics, and the liver inflammation went away as we stayed on the antibiotics. Okay. But I haven't seen that. I haven't seen it with pancreatitis. The one situation that can happen that can lead to your pancreas not making adequate digestive enzymes. So lipase is an enzyme made by the pancreas that helps break down fat. All right. Your pancreas also makes proteases, enzymes that break down protein. And so it makes a variety of protein or of enzymes that help you break down food. All right. Now, for the pancreas to make those enzymes, it has to get signals to make them. And where the signals happen to come from is healthy intestinal lining. And if your intestines happen to have quite a bit of dysbiosis or abnormal levels of different bacteria, that unhealthy levels of different bacteria, whether not having enough of good bacteria or having bacteria that aren't supposed to be there, organisms that are supposed to be there, then you can sometimes get the intestines will not signal correctly for the pancreas to make digestive enzymes, and you can get low levels of pancrease. Okay. So generally what I like to do in situations, generally, if somebody's probably been looking for you might want to go ahead and get a comprehensive stool analysis. I like using the Jona.health one. And Jona is looking at markers of dysbiosis that could lead to pancreatic insufficiency in there too. Genova Diagnostics and their stool panels does the same thing too. But I would suspect I would be looking for dysbiosis, imbalance of bacteria within your intestines that's leading to your pancreas not to be able to make enough of the lipase. And then consider what you can do to weed, seed, and feed the good bacteria to get it back to normal again. Okay? All right. Good luck to you, Chris. Oops, sorry about that. Let's see here. Next question is from Sue. Hi, Dr. Ross. I appreciate your good heart. Thank you. I appreciate you saying that. Thank you. I'm struggling with exhaustion, Lyme mold viruses. I don't have much of a metabolism, and I know I need help with mitochondria. I tried creatine and started getting body cramps, but may have been taking too much. I'm thinking of trying ATP 360 by Research Nutritionals because you have talked about it in the past. What do you think? I'm grateful for you, Sue. All right. So it could give you some benefit. So when people have, let's just look at the underlying causes that can lead to fatigue, okay? So in chronic tick-borne infections and in mold and in chronic viruses, one of the main things that can happen is your immune system, in responding to these infections, manufactures a bunch of chemicals called cytokines. And those cytokines are good and bad. On the good side, they turn the immune system on to fight the infections. On the bad side, though, in excess, cytokines give you brain fog, give you fatigue. Okay, so your cytokines can be a leading cause of fatigue directly by themselves. Sometimes those cytokines disturb your sleep, which is another possibility for having fatigue. And those cytokines also can interfere with your thyroid and your adrenals making correct amounts of adrenal and thyroid hormones. Okay, all right. So when somebody comes in with fatigue, the first thing I want to do is I want to figure out, are they getting enough sleep? Are they getting 7 to 9 hours of sleep a night? And if they're not, then I want to work primarily through lifestyle mechanisms, healthy sleeping habits to help improve sleep, and maybe resort to herbal or prescription medicines if needed. But I try to go more lifestyle on that. Okay. Number 2, I want to take steps to lower cytokines. And so I'd like using, many of you know, I like working with curcumin. I like working with a liposomal variety of curcumin. Curcumin is a derivative of turmeric. It's a component of turmeric, that is. And it gets inside white blood cells and can block the production line that leads to cytokine production. Okay. I like using a liposomal variety because on its own, curcumin is not well absorbed. And to get it absorbed, you need to have it prepared in a way it can be absorbed. And so a liposomal product I like using, because there's a chance with this liposomal product you get absorption of curcumin, is a product by Thorne Research called curcumin phytosome. It's a 500 milligram pill. I like people to take 1 pill 3 times a day. The other part of lowering cytokines is to decrease the white blood cells getting the signal to make cytokines. And I like using glutathione for that. And just like curcumin, with glutathione, you need a liposomal variety to increase your chances of getting good absorption. And the product I like for that is a Tri-Fortify product by Research Nutritionals. They've got really good data showing improved absorption out of their formula. Okay. All right. And I usually would do a teaspoon of that once a day. All right. So number 1, correct sleep if you can. Try to lower cytokines if you can. And then look to see if you have low adrenal or thyroid. Thyroid would be through blood testing. Adrenals can also be through blood testing or spit testing. And you want to do some evaluation to see, are those low or not? And if they are, then correct for those. Okay. If you're not clear, you could go one step further, or if you're not totally clear, there is an herbal medicine product called Ashwagandha that, or actually I should say ingredient, not product. It's found in products, but Ashwagandha is an Ayurvedic and Chinese medicine herb that has been found through centuries to help improve energy in people. And probably the way that it works, based on animal studies, is it helps your thyroid work better and helps the adrenal glands work better. And so when people have low energy, I'm often going to support the thyroid and adrenals by using ashwagandha. And I'm going to have, you can, depending on the product you get, it's going to come as a 400 to 500 milligram pill. And I have people take 2 of those pills in the morning and 2 of the pills between 1 and 2. Okay. And then if they've had fatigue for a long time, I assume there is also a degree of mitochondrial dysfunction. And the reason you can get mitochondrial dysfunction, so your mitochondria, everyone, are your energy factories found in every one of your cells. And those inside those energy factories is where a fuel, a cell fuel called ATP is made. And what happens is the covering of the mitochondria is a double layer of fat, a biphospholipid layer. And the oxidation state of having infections or having mold toxins in you the oxidation state made by the immune system to deal with those can injure the covering of your mitochondria. So you get damage to the phospholipid layer, and then you get incomplete production of ATP within the mitochondria. So I like to do phospholipid repair to repair that. And the product you mentioned by ATP 360 by Research Nutritionals, the primary ingredient is a phospholipid mix that can repair the covering of the mitochondria. In addition, that product has in it some mitochondrial micronutrients like coenzyme Q10. And then it has a substance in it called PQQ, also known as pyroquinolene quinone. I like that name. And PQQ is, the intent of putting PQQ in there is it may promote mitochondrial biogenesis or mitochondrial growth. All right. So that product, when you look at studies that have been done by Research Nutritionals, by being on it for a couple months, there is, I believe the average energy improvement was around 40 or 50%, somewhere in that range. I have to go back and look at the study, but it actually did show good energy improvements. Okay. So I like using that then too. All right. So when somebody's got fatigue, it's a multifactorial problem, right? Number one, you got to correct sleep, lower cytokines, support your adrenal and thyroid, and then consider do mitochondrial repair support. Okay. Now, the creatine that you were trying is actually kind of an interesting substance too, because that can help improve energy production within your mitochondria, but it does so in a different way than repairing the covering of the mitochondria. And so remember I said that the end product of your mitochondria is it makes this fuel called ATP. All right. So ATP stands for adenosine triphosphate. It's an adenosine chemical that has 3 phosphate groups on it. All right. When it gets used when it gets spent, when it gets burned as part of energy, then it becomes something called adenosine diphosphate, adenosine with 2 phosphates. All right. What creatine is, it's a phosphate source. And if you happen to have enough of creatine phosphate from creatine sitting in your mitochondria, that spent ADP will right away grab a phosphate group and go back into being ATP. And so you get a quick recycling of the ATP without the mitochondria having to start all over at the beginning to produce more. And so you can get some increased energy by doing that. Generally, a level, if somebody is considering doing that, the amount that will get into every part of your body except your brain is a dose of about 5 grams a day. If you want it to get in the brain and help your mitochondria function in the brain, generally most of us are recommending 10 grams a day. Now it's a powder and it can be very irritating to people intestinally. So if you're going to try 10 grams a day, I usually suggest to people that they divide it into 2 5-gram doses, basically. All right. Now, in terms of, I don't understand why you got the body cramps from it. I will tell you, one thing I've learned in managing tick-borne infections is that all of us are very unique biologic beings, and our chemistries and our influences that lead to chemical functions, et cetera, are all very different. And so even though there may be standard side effects of certain prescriptions or supplements, there's very unique things that happen in individuals too. And so sometimes there's things that happen we just can't explain that aren't average side effects. I would not call what happened to you an average side effect. Okay. All right. So anyhow, those are some thoughts for you to look at. Okay. For those of you that want a little bit more information, let me just do a quick screen share here for you. Okay, so I believe I've got, let's see what I got here. Sometimes I forget what I have here because I wrote a number of these articles a while ago. If you look at my energy and fatigue section here, if you're looking for an article about mitochondria and energy, you would click on this article here, okay? If you want to know just some basic steps that I covered, like sleep and adrenals, etc., you would click on this article here called Improve Fatigue and Boost Energy, the Basic Steps, where I talk about sleep. I talk about actually diet. I should have put that in there. Cytokine control, being on curcumin is this adaptogen section here as well too. Okay. And so yeah, take a look here. That gives you some information as well too. Okay. All right. All right. Good luck to you, Sue. Thanks for the question. Hello, Shauna. I hope I said your name correctly there. I have Bart. I take Cryptolepis, Japanese knotweed, and cinnamon clove oregano. If I skip any of them, I feel lousy. Same with low-dose naltrexone and a few other vitamins. However, I don't notice any difference at all when I don't take either liposomal glutathione or ATP 360. I'll take them for a couple months. Didn't seem to benefit me in any way. When I stopped, it didn't seem to make any difference at all. Should I take them? It feels like a waste. So generally, when somebody's trying to repair the mitochondria, and again, I like the ATP 360 for that, the glutathione actually helps in terms of mitochondrial repair too, by limiting oxidative damage happening to that biphospholipid layer that I was talking about earlier. But generally, if the ATP 360 is going to help, coupled with glutathione, it's usually within about 2 or 3 months of using it that you're going to notice a difference. And if you're not, I think it'd be okay to stop it. The only thing is with the glutathione is also there to help with detox, and that would be kind of silent in the background kind of things. And it may help limit some of the cytokines as well too. You might split the difference and keep the glutathione going, even though you don't notice any obvious difference when you stop it, just because of some of the background work that it's doing. But usually within 2 to 3 months, if you're not having improved energy on that ATP 360, I'll have my patients stop it. Okay. All right. Good luck to you. Hello, Julie. Let's see. I see an internist with very poor communication skills. I plan to see an ID doctor in September. Can you tell me if this sounds like a good idea? Trying to get more info about what is going on with me. I have Lyme, 2 Bs, Rocky Mountain spotted fever, and mast cell syndrome. Okay. So I will tell you, most 99% of infectious disease doctors are not skilled at managing mast cell activation and chronic tick-borne infections. 99% of infectious disease doctors don't believe in chronic tick-borne infections. And what they would say is if you had your doxycycline for 3 weeks and you're still sick, they like to call that condition something called post-treatment Lyme disease syndrome, which basically means they think you're still sick. They just don't believe it's due to chronic infection. And what I would tell you is we have got tons of science showing that Lyme can persist. It can live on beyond 30 days of antibiotics, even months of antibiotics sometimes. And so a good starting point is to find a doctor that at least believes in the condition you have. So I'm not clear you're going to get any help out of that doctor. And I would not think of most of those doctors as being skilled at all at even thinking about mast cell activation syndrome as well too. All right. And I hope you can find an internist that has better communication style for you. All right. Good luck to you, Julie. Hello, Nina. Let's see. I have low ferritin and supplementing with iron. I wonder if there was another part to your question there, but I don't see it here. So ferritin, everyone, is the storage form of iron in the body. And iron, you need adequate iron to make your red blood cells. But you may still have enough iron to make red blood cells where you don't have anemia, but still have low levels of your storage form of iron. Usually we like to have ferritin about 40 or higher. If you have less than 40, you may still be able to make enough red blood cells, but iron is a critical element in a lot of your chemical reactions that give you energy. And so you could have low iron, low ferritin, and it could be part of sluggish energy production as well too. So if somebody's got low energy and their ferritin levels are sitting at 40 or lower, I often will supplement with iron as well for that. Okay, all right. Thanks for bringing that up. Hello, Stephanie. Let's see. Can Bartonella cause vagus nerve issues or paralysis? So in theory, yeah. Bartonella is a bacteria that, we think may be transmitted by ticks, although I got to tell you, the science there is not clear. But even if it's not transmitted by ticks, it can live in people. And it may be that when you get a tick bite that gives you Lyme, it activates the Bartonella that's already there. All right. And one of the things that Bartonella can do is Bartonella, well, actually, let me go back to this transmission part. So we've got good studies that show that Bartonella is in ticks, all right? What we don't have good studies on is the proof that they are able to transmit it into us. So there's a question about whether it's truly transmitted by ticks into us or not. Not that ticks can't be infected. But we also have a lot of good evidence, and this is coming out of the Centers for Disease Control now, that Bartonella infection, evidence of Bartonella infection, is pretty ubiquitous or common within the general population. This would be people that don't have any illnesses. There's a lot of evidence that there's a lot of Bartonella that's out there, and either the immune system got rid of it or the immune system is able to keep it under control, much like we can live like with chronic Epstein-Barr virus in us, for instance, okay? But one of the things that Bartonella is known for is the predominant things that Bartonella causes are neuropsychiatric symptoms, all right? So it can lead to various kinds of neuropathies, including vagus nerve neuropathies and paralysis. So it could do nerve injury and could lead to that. So yeah, it's possible. That is possible, all right? Borrelia can too. So just keep that in mind too, Borrelia being Lyme, okay? All right, good luck to you, Stephanie. Hello, Julie. My allergist said my numbers for alpha-gal are low and I am to do a dairy challenge. Can you speak to that? My cats have all tested positive for Bartonella. Can they infect me if they scratch me? So I'm not sure. So alpha-gal means that you're going to have, let's talk about what alpha-gal is first. So alpha-gal is a condition that's getting worse. We're getting, especially out on the East Coast. My understanding is there's places on Martha's Vineyard now where you go out and eat. They're offering alpha-gal menus so that you can have food. So what happens in alpha-gal is a tick can inject a sugar into you that is similar to or is the same kind of sugar that's found in mammalian meat and mammalian meat products. So mammalian meats would be things like beef. I believe pork falls into that too. And I'd have to go double check that. But anyhow, mammalian meat and meat products. So milk would be a mammalian meat product as well too, okay? And so if you happen to get, if you have products that have mammalian products and you still have alpha-gal going on, you would have a reaction. Now, I don't know that I agree to doing a dairy challenge, because what they may be thinking is that your system is over it. The problem is with alpha-gal is many people can recover completely from it, but you have to avoid anything that will cause your immune system to get activated against this sugar for at least about 2 years. And so if you challenge it too soon, you may reset the time clock. the amount of time it takes for the immune system to quiet down and not react against this. Okay. So maybe your allergist has some experience doing that. I'm not sure that I would handle it that way, but I can't say they're wrong either. So you might want to talk to them a little bit more about that. And then in terms of your question about your cat, so if it is possible your cats could spread Bartonella to you. It doesn't mean they will. That's the best I can say with that. Okay. All right. Good luck to you, Julie. Hello, Cindy. Let's see your thoughts on peptides. Which ones would be best for Lyme neuropathy and arthritis? Are injectables better because of absorption than orals? Any you recommend? So I will tell you this. I use peptides in my practice. I've been using oral peptides, but I have to admit the scientific base under peptides is limited to almost non-existent at best. And I know that there's a lot of people out there claiming peptides are the salvation for people with any condition, but the truth is the science is a little bit limited. It's very, very limited, actually. In fact, Kennedy just tried to get a lot of the injectable peptides reapproved again, and they held meetings in Washington, D.C. about probably within a month here now. And the FDA panel that is reviewing this, basically, many members said the committee considering this was heavily stacked by people that stand to profit from the sale of peptides. It was just a very skewed panel. But the main thing that I saw to that was just how limited the science was under it. Okay. All right. So I just have to admit that. In theory, one of the peptides that is useful for neuropathy and arthritis is a peptide called BPC-157. It is a peptide that is naturally made within your stomach lining, and it has been used for long periods of time now by athletes who seem to get better recovery from injuries. And so it's useful at doing tissue repair and even nerve repair is what I have seen in my practice. So even though there isn't a lot of science that says that it can work, and a practical standpoint is I've used BPC-157 in my practice, I have seen it help with injury to tissues that are seen in both neuropathy and arthritis, okay? The other thing that BPC-157 can do in theory is regulate your immune system, so it's going to tend to be trigger less arthritis. It can calm inflammation down. And BPC-157 is useful for improving gut function as well too. And there's some evidence it may help with mitochondria activity, improve mitochondria. So if you're looking for one to try, it would be BPC-157. These days, it is not legal for any pharmacy to actually make BPC-157 for injections. If you are finding some, these are probably labeled experimental. And because it's not falling under FDA regulation right now, it's not clear if you're getting anything that's a valid product for injection at this point or not. If these eventually get approved by the FDA, they're going to be approved for compounding pharmacies to make them. And the one thing that you at least have when a compounding pharmacy makes this is that there is some regulations of compounding pharmacies that they're going to have to prove that what they put in it is in it and it's active, okay? With a lot of this experimental stuff that you can buy online out there, you can't say that at all. And I know that there are some practitioners out there doing peptides, but I'm questioning where they're getting their product is essentially most of the injectable peptide industry through compounding pharmacies was shut down a couple of years ago. So I'm not clear where a lot of these practitioners are getting it. Now, peptides also are sold as supplements, and there's some question about whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, or whether it is something that they're allowed to do or not, but they do it. And so there's a company called Integrated Peptides, and I have used their products before, and I find that it's well absorbed. I get good benefits out of it. The idea that supplement companies are using to make peptides is the FDA, although it has said we will regulate whether you can make an injectable, it has to be made at a compounding pharmacy. They have also said that they are not going to regulate products that have amino acids in them that have 40 or less amino acids. So what distinguishes a peptide from a protein is how many amino acids are in it. The amino acids are the building block, okay? And the amino acids in a peptide are usually going to, I think it's actually 50. 50 or less amino acids makes something a peptide. Above that makes it a protein. The FDA has said that they will regulate proteins that have 50 or more amino acids in it, but then they will not regulate in terms of calling it a drug, other than if it's made for injection, which is a different issue altogether. But they will not regulate something as a drug if it has less than 50 amino acids. And so some of the companies like Integrative Peptides, which makes products, supplement products, have taken that as a green light that the FDA will not get in their way. And so far, the FDA has not shut any of them down for doing it. But the long-term viability is still hard to sell if that's going to be something that's going to be viable or not. But to answer your question, this is a situation I would do BPC 157. I think the oral version can work as well as the injectable version from my experience working with it. And it's usually a 500 microgram pill, and you want to do that twice a day. Okay? All right. Good luck to you, Cindy. So if you do want some information about the supplement versions of peptides that are out there and what they might benefit, take a look at my article that I have written on peptides. And it's this article called The Best Oral Peptide Guide. And in here, I work through the various peptides that are out there, including BPC 157 and a number of other ones here. You'll see them here, and talk about what they might do. Okay? All right. Hello, Shannon. Hold on here just a minute. So actually, before I take Shannon's question, I just want to let everyone know. So I know that you're all asking me questions here, but I'd love to help you in other ways too. So for those of you that need additional help, either want review of what your doctor is doing with you, or you want somebody to actually manage your Lyme disease, I offer two ways that you can visit with me. And I welcome you to come and see me. I'd love to be able to help you. And to do that, let me just show you how you would find my practice. So you could go to my Lyme information site and then click this book appointment button, okay? And that will bring you over to my practice website. And so here there's two different ways that you can see me. One of those is to do an educational consult where I do not prescribe. I can't order tests, but I can give you a good idea what I'm thinking and give you ideas that you can implement yourself or ideas you can take to your physician. Okay, that's this remote consult. If you want me to be your prescriber or order tests, you must first see me in office first. And after that, if you are in Washington State where I'm licensed, you can do telemedicine. If you're not in Washington State, you would need to come in every 2 months or so to see me so I can keep prescribing and ordering tests for you. Okay. All right. And so those are the two options to see me at this point. I am looking at some other licensing options to see if I might be able to work with people from other states. And there's a cost involved in doing that and time involved in doing that, but I may be able to eventually suggest that I can do initial in-clinic care and telemedicine for about a few more states coming up. I'll keep you posted if we see how that works out. Okay? All right. Let me go back here again. Okay, so anyhow, I just want to, if y'all want help, I'm glad to help you. I'd love to help people, and come on out and see me in Seattle or schedule one of those remote consult visits as well too. Okay? All right. So Shannon, let's see what you got here. Let's see. Hi, Dr. Ross. Can Lyme cause uncontrollable diarrhea? I've tracked my food and can't seem to find a connection between what I eat and diarrhea that seems to come out of nowhere. I have to be close to the bathroom when it happens. It's been going on and off for almost 10 years, and it's really disruptive to my life. Any thoughts? Thank you. So I haven't seen Lyme itself lead to diarrhea. In other words, be the cause of it, or Bartonella be the cause of it. But you, as a result of treating these conditions, you may have taken antibiotics that can disrupt the good bacteria makeup of your intestines, and it's those good bacteria and parasites and everything else that normally lives in our intestines that make the intestines work well. A starting place that I would do with this, Shannon, is to get a thorough stool analysis. And these days, I think the primary way I like to do that is through a company called Jona, Jona. Jona is doing a very comprehensive analysis of your stool. And essentially what they're doing is they're carving up everything in your stool, and then they're doing a type of genetic analysis called shotgun sequencing, where they take all the genetic pieces and then they use AI and they try to see, compared to all the known organisms that anyone has ever thought might be in your intestines, they try to see which ones do you actually have. And they look to see, does that look like a good balance or not a good balance? And then they'll give you recommendations on what to do to correct the balance if it's not useful. Okay. And so I would do that. The other thing they have the ability to do is to identify parasites that shouldn't be there that may be giving you diarrhea. They may be able to identify bacteria that shouldn't be there that could be giving you diarrhea. So a starting point for something like this is to get a comprehensive stool analysis, and even beyond the standard LabCorp Quest diagnostic stool analysis, something really comprehensive. And that would be this analysis through Jona. Jona's testing is a direct-to-consumer test, so you don't need a doctor's order, and you can find it at Jona.health. So their URL is a .health URL. So Jona, Jona period HEALTH. Okay, all right. Good luck to you, Shannon. All right, hold on here just a minute. All right, let's see. Can you review your questions about Vibrant Labs, please? Is there potential to have Borrelia burgdorferi and 2 European strains? All right. So my problem, I think what you mean is my concerns about Vibrant. So as you know, there's actually, I can't say as you know, but we have independent labs that many of us that work with tick-borne illnesses will use to help us figure out if somebody has these illnesses, right? So rather than using LabCorp or Quest diagnostics labs, we have found that some of these independent labs, like a Vibrant is an independent lab, may have more useful testing for us. Now, the one thing you get when you do testing through Quest or LabCorp, those tests that are done at Quest and LabCorp, they're usually using test kits that have been approved for resale by the Food and Drug Administration. And when a company makes a test kit for resale, when they get FDA approved, FDA is making them show that the test has some accuracy. Okay, all right. Now therefore, whenever you have an independent lab like IGenex or T-Lab or InfectoLab or Vibrant, what these independent labs are supposed to do is they're supposed to do validation studies where they take their test and they take samples of blood or urine, whatever they're testing, and they look to see how good are they identifying the samples that actually have the germ, and how good are they at not overdiagnosing the ones that don't have the germ. Okay, that's called validation studies. And whenever I use an independent lab that is not selling something that's FDA approved, I ask that lab to send me their validation studies. I want to know, are they accurate, and have they actually done validation studies? Okay. And what I can tell you about Vibrant, they have only adequately validated their Borrelia test. They have not done adequate validation of Babesia, Bartonella, and all the other infections they test for. They just have not done adequate validation studies. And I have seen numerous times that people came in with a test from Vibrant that might suggest they have Bartonella and yet they have no Bartonella symptoms, or might suggest they have Babesia and yet they have no Babesia symptoms. Likewise, I have seen numerous times where somebody has come in and they have a lot of Babesia symptoms or Bartonella symptoms, and Vibrant has missed it. Okay. Now, Vibrant has been doing a great job marketing to all the naturopaths and functional medicine doctors. And regrettably, my colleagues are not thinking doctors. Most of my colleagues are not calling up Vibrant to say, give me your validation studies, all right? They're taking the word of a salesperson that came through the door. But most of us, a lot of us that are now within ILADs are not the biggest believer in Vibrant testing. We just don't find it to be accurate, okay? So it's an accuracy issue. Now, when I look at IGenex, for instance, and the labs, yes, the IGenex methods cost more, but IGenex has gone through every one of their tests and validated it. A lot of the reason that Vibrant is having such an impact out there is it's a lot less costly to get Vibrant testing versus an IGenex test. IGenex, though, has better validation. And so when you get a result back from IGenex, there's more chance that it's correct. You get what you pay for, okay? So other than possibly Borrelia, I have no way of relying on the information I get from a Vibrant test for the other tick-borne infections. What I can tell you is IGenex, on the other hand, which many of you know that is my preferred lab to use. I like using the IGenex Immunoblot method, which is a method they use to see if you have antibodies against proteins found on the covering of these germs. For the Borrelia test, the Lyme test through IGenex, and for Babesia and for Bartonella, they have done adequate validation studies. And with their validation studies, they can tell me that they are successful at identifying these infections when they're there 93 to 94% of the time. And when they do identify it, they're 100% correct. They validated their studies to know that, okay? And when it comes to one of the reasons they're also more useful is IGenex and their Immunoblot is looking to see if you have antibodies against 8 strains of Borrelia. And these include the European strains that are now starting to show up a lot on the East Coast of the United States. So that would be Borrelia afzelii, Borrelia guerini. We're getting a lot of it that has jumped across the pond, if you will, from Europe, and is now those are becoming predominant infections on the East Coast of the United States. So one of the reasons IGenex is also useful is it tests for more strains. For Bartonella, they test for 4 specific strains and also the genus or the family. We think there's actually 15 strains of Bartonella that can infect people. So between their genus as well as their 4 specific strains, they pick up all 15. And the same with Babesia. We think there may be 12, 20 different strains of Babesia. And because they have a genus test and they also test for 2 specific varieties, we have the ability to pick up all the kinds of Babesia. So that's the other thing that makes the IGenex test better. Okay. All right. Excuse me. So I don't trust Vibrant. I'll just put it that way. All right. Thanks, Susan. Hello, Linda. Let's see. I have mast cell activation syndrome. Can it make your body not absorb nutrients? My ferritin level was 15 and had an iron infusion, which boosted for about a month and dropped again. So I have not seen that mast cell activation led to somebody not absorbing the nutrients. What I can tell you is that some people have, as part of their mast cell activation, have a lot of histamine release within their intestines from activated mast cells that will give them a lot of gassiness and bloating, can even give them fatigue as the mast cells react against foods that they eat. I'm not clear if that decreases ferritin absorption or iron absorption, though. All right. I would usually be looking for a reason, especially if it's in a woman. Usually the major reason that people will have low ferritin is from having heavy periods and not having adequate iron in the diet to replace that. In general, okay, not everyone, but those would be the main reasons on that. Okay, all right. Good luck to you, Linda. Hello, Nathan. Let's see. Upon your recommendation, I started taking Methylene Blue, 30 milligram 2 times a day for brain fog. It has been a miracle. That's good. Good. My brain fog is 90% gone. My treating doctor for SIRS and Bartonella told me today to stop taking it because it's dangerous, could cause serious blood issues. Do you agree with him? Thank you. So what I will tell you is Methylene Blue, one of the things you need to do before you take it is to get a blood test for something called G6PD. And G6PD regulates the amount of antioxidants in your red blood cells. If you don't have adequate G6PD, if it's low, and you take Methylene Blue, it could lead to hemolysis or rupture of your red blood cells. So you should at least have had a G6PD done, okay? Now, other things that can happen from Methylene Blue, sometimes it can be an irritant to the bladder lining. And so sometimes when people are on Methylene Blue, they'll have to urinate frequently. If that's the case, sometimes using an over-the-counter medicine called Ferritin can help with that. In addition, Methylene Blue may raise serotonin levels in the brain, so we want to be careful about using it with people that are on antidepressant medicines that might raise serotonin as well. Generally, what I'm going to do if I want to put somebody on Methylene Blue, I'm going to wind up making sure I review their psychiatric medicines with them. And if they're on something that raises serotonin, I want them to be on the lower side of the dosing range. So for instance, Prozac, you might dose at 20 milligrams up to 80 milligrams. I'm usually going to want to keep it more on the 20 milligram side. And if I do that, I've never run into a condition where there's too much serotonin there, all right? Then there are some animal studies that show increased cancer risk from using Methylene Blue at ridiculously high levels, way beyond anything that you're doing. And so some doctors get skittish about that, but I will tell you, could probably take most approved prescription medicines, and somebody's done a rat study that showed at high doses it can lead to cancer, okay? So I'm not clear if those are useful studies. What I can tell you about Methylene Blue is, unfortunately, we do not have long-term safety studies. We do not. And so I advise my patients when I put them on Methylene Blue that although I think it's safe in the short term, I cannot tell them, is it safe to take for a year or 2 years? We just don't have safety studies on that. But generally, I disagree with your physician here. All right. So if you want to read more about safety and how to use Methylene Blue and how it might help. So for those of you who don't know, I should have started over again here. Methylene Blue is quite the agent these days. There were studies out of Johns Hopkins about 6 years ago that showed it is an agent that can be useful at killing growing and hibernating forms of Bartonella and Borrelia. Okay, and probably the way it does it destabilizes the germ covering, and so it represents a novel way of killing these germs, especially what we call persisters, which are hibernating germs, and regular antibiotics have a hard time getting those. Okay. But additionally, it is an MAO inhibitor, so it might help with depression. The other thing it can do with mitochondrial dysfunction, which is what you're talking about, is it can improve a process within the mitochondria, which is called electron transport, the electron transport chain, I should say. And to generate these ATPs I talked about earlier, there's a process where electrons have to go from one protein to another protein complex to another protein complex to another protein complex. It's called the electron transport chain, right? And that can get injured. And what Methylene Blue does is an electron transporter. So if you've got damage to these complexes, there's usually protein complex 1 and 3, I believe. The Methylene Blue can step in there, grab the electrons, and patch it and carry it forward. And so it can give a lot of good thinking improvements as well, too. All right. But you do got to check the G6PD level. For those of you that are interested in all the things that Methylene Blue might do for you, take a look at my article here. Let me get it for you. And this is the article here. Okay, it's Mighty Methylene Blue for tick-borne infections and more. And in here, I talked about why we might use it. And then depression. It can help with a medical problem called methemoglobinemia, where your hemoglobin, which carries oxygen, doesn't release it well enough. Okay, I talk here about the need to get G6PD tested. I talk about concerns about getting too much serotonin. And the main side effects are going to be, it's going to turn everything blue that when you urinate. And then about 5% of people get some bladder irritation is what I talk about here. Okay. All right. I will tell you, Methylene Blue has made a significant impact in my practice. It's one of those agents I use in some of my tougher Bartonella cases, and I have found good benefits at adding that in. I know not all of my colleagues are doing it. I know Mozignani, I don't believe, is doing it. I know Steve Phillips, when he was still practicing, would not do Methylene Blue, but I think they're missing an agent that can make a big difference for people. Yeah. Thanks for bringing it up, and I'm glad you got good thinking. Hello, Teresa. Let's see. First diagnosed with Lyme in 2020, new to the Lyme regime. Took 2 months of azithromycin and cefuroxime. Headaches went away. 2023, diagnosed with 3 Bs and treated with herbals. Have tried several regimes on my own. Recently, IGenex testing shows IgG 3141, spinal tap negative. Symptoms indicate chronic 24/7 headache, fatigue, neuropathy, dizziness, brain fog. Have now taken 1 month of amoxicillin. My determination keeps me going, but I'm not sure I note any improvements. Any thoughts? Okay. So this mix of symptoms you have, when I just look at it, and again, I don't get to ask you a bunch of questions to clarify things, but neuropathy and brain fog, fatigue, headaches, that could be Borrelia, which is Lyme. The neuropathy, brain fog part of that could be Bartonella, and so it may be that hasn't been adequately treated. And then severe fatigue sometimes can be part of Babesia. So sometimes when people are not recovering from treatment, you've got to make sure that all the germs are being addressed. If you happen to go after Borrelia, but you don't deal with the Babesia that's there, sometimes you're not going to recover. Okay, so I just want to make that as a comment. The other thing I will tell you, when we look at studies, so a number of years ago, My Lyme Data, which is a research project of LymeDisease.org, My Lyme Data has enrolled, I don't even know what they're up to now, I think maybe 50 or 60,000 people that have tick-borne infections, and they periodically go out and query them, ask them questions to try to get answers. And one of the things that they did about 6 years ago, maybe now, they ran a study they asked people, what did it take for you to get well? And the conclusions were there were 3 primary parts of their conclusion. Number 1, using antibiotics. And the problem with that, they didn't really make a distinction. They didn't try to clarify, could herbal antibiotics get you well? But in their study, they were looking mainly at antibiotics. Okay, so antibiotics persistently for a year or more. Okay, so I want you to hear the year or more part. So using antibiotics persistently, regularly for a year or more, and working with a Lyme literate doctor who can kind of help steer you through everything. Okay. So they were able to say in their study that a year or more of treatment for Borrelia is what it takes to make a difference. Most of us that are treating chronic Borrelia will tell you it's going to be a year or 2 years to get well of using almost continuous or very regular antibiotics. All right. Now, Bartonella, on average, to get germs under control can be about 6 months. In my experience, for about 80% of people, there's 20% that take longer. Babesia, to get under control, is going to be about 5 months. And That's for about 80% of people. About 20% of people, it will be a chronic ongoing infection. What you've described here, though, is using treatments of too short of a duration to really get these germs out. And I would want to make sure you have considered whether you still have active Babesia or Bartonella in you in addition to Borrelia. The amoxicillin is only going to deal with Borrelia. In terms, when somebody has Borrelia, there's been one unpublished study that looked at how quickly do you turn around. And even though it may take a year or 2 years to get well, to turn around, that's what this question was asking. And so there was a colleague of mine that did an office study, and he put everyone with Borrelia in his practice on clarithromycin, which is Biaxin, and he also put them on Flagyl. And then he watched how long did it take them to get well, to see an improvement, okay? And what his study showed is that by 3 months, 30% of people started to improve. So by 3 months, 30% of people started to improve, which means 70% saw no improvement yet, okay? 6 months for 60% of people to start improving, and 9 months for 90% of people to start improving. So it's too early to tell if the amoxicillin is going to make a difference for you. It takes time, okay? Now, I will tell you when it comes to Bartonella and Babesia, what my experience tells me is that these germs, Bartonella and Babesia, replicate much more quickly than what Borrelia does. And in general, things that replicate more often will be killed more easily by your antibiotics and more quickly, okay? So with Bartonella and Babesia, because they replicate so much faster, if a regimen that you're on is working for those germs and their symptoms, by about 1 to 2 months, you should start seeing improvements, okay? All right. So symptoms that would make me wonder about Babesia would be bad headache, is possibility. Actually, usually more vice grip headaches, okay? A night sweats, racing and skipping of the heart, getting lightheaded easily on standing up, and air hunger. Those and panic attacks. Those are things that make me wonder about Babesia, having a number of those, okay? And severe fatigue in there too, okay? Bartonella would be having a lot of neurologic and psychiatric concerns, along with pain on the balls of the feet and air hunger for Bartonella too. And neuropsych would be, brain fog would be part of that as well too. A lot of anxiousness would be part of that. Dizziness could be part of that, okay? And then Borrelia can give you all that stuff I just talked about, but a defining feature of Borrelia that makes you think it's active is having wandering muscle or joint pains or wandering neuropathy. And so those would be some things that might tip your hat in that direction too. Okay. All right. Good luck to you, Teresa. Lynn says the heart condition the elder couple I asked about is that they both had a heart attack. That would cause me to consider whether it is too risky to give the vaccine. But again, I don't know enough about whether they're frail, all the other stuff that's going on with them. This is really something they need to weigh out risk and benefits with their own healthcare provider, Lynn. All right. Thanks for bringing that up. Hello, Joyce. Hold on here just a minute. Let's see. Hi, Dr. Ross. Would you please review clinical symptoms of SIBO without getting tested, if that is possible? Does stress play a part in gut issues despite a healthy diet lifestyle? Long-term 3Bs and have been on antibiotics for over 10 years, primarily herbal. Thank you as always for sharing your knowledge. P.S. Would you mind taking a moment to explain what to expect from an in-person visit? I live in North Carolina and trying to weigh the pros and cons of such a long trip. Thanks. All right. So actually, I'll talk about the trip. So basically, I mean, you would need to come out and we would spend up to about 2 hours in your first visit. And so I would take a very detailed history in that first visit. I would look at all the laboratory tests that you bring with you that have been done that might inform me. And that would even be regular doctor testing as well too. The history, I want to take a very detailed history to see if I can figure out whether it truly is tick-borne infections or whether it's mold toxicity, et cetera. Okay. And then usually if you've traveled all that way, that just being out here may be exhausting. I would usually say maybe travel out the day before, get an earlier in the day appointment with me. And if you want to, you could try to travel back the next day. But for what you're describing, I would look at doing this as a 3-day. And then follow-ups would need to be about every 2 months. And that's a 30-minute visit. Some of my East Coast people will fly out one day, have an earlier in the morning appointment, and then fly back out and go home from there. For any issues that come up between our visits, I have a secure messaging portal where we can write back and forth. And occasionally, if I need to, I may set up a remote consult visit with you to work out some more urgent problems. But any major changes to your treatment, we have to do in office because of the medical licensing laws. Okay. All right. And if you have any more questions, what I was able to do, if you want more of an explanation, feel free to call my practice, 800-470-7217. It's on my website as well, too, 800-470-7217. You'll wind up talking to Christine. Christine has been my right and left hand for the last, I think 2007 is when Christine joined me. And so she knows the ins and outs of my practice very well. She's worked with me all those years. Really, really good person to talk with, and she'll be able to answer your questions and the ins and outs of it as well, too. Okay? All right. All right. Then let's see here. Okay, so SIBO, small intestine bacterial overgrowth, is usually going to give people a lot of gassiness and bloating when they eat. Okay? The trouble is it can look very similar to intestinal yeast overgrowth. And so generally, if I've got somebody that is getting gassy and bloated, the first thing that I'm going to usually do with food, or they're gassy and bloated even beyond food, the first thing I'm going to do is probably treat them for intestinal yeast overgrowth. And if that doesn't clear their gassiness and bloating, then I'm going to consider if they might have SIBO. Now, there's a variant of SIBO, a related condition to SIBO, which is called SIFO, small intestine, small intestine fungal overgrowth or yeast overgrowth in the small intestines, all right? Now, when I usually talk about intestinal yeast overgrowth, I'm talking the large intestines. That's where you get most of your yeast problems that give you gassiness and bloating. But there are some people that will get yeast growing in their small intestines. So, and we don't have a test for that. We do have a test for the bacteria that grow in your small intestines, SIBO, but we don't have a decent way of testing for yeast in your small intestines. So part of the reason in my practice, what I do, anyone that's got gassiness and bloating when they eat, I'm going to start by trying to clear yeast out of their large intestines. And if they happen to have yeast in their small intestines, that treatment will take care of that. Okay. Now, the way you test for SIBO is there's a breath test that you do. And basically you take a sugar substance and then we have you breathe into these collection containers over the course of 2 hours. Or if you have constipation, we'll have you do it over the course of 3 hours. And then we see if you produce too much methane, too much hydrogen, and sometimes sulfide. We'll test to see about that. And if you are, so you make those gases because you're fermenting food with all that bacteria in your intestines. Okay. All right. The other part, so then in parts of treating, we want to put people, initially, I put them on a diet that removes the kind of sugars that would be fermented in the small intestines. Okay. And then we'll wind up putting them on antimicrobials, and you can even go herbal here if you want to, for about 2 to 3 months to clear that out. Sometimes being on an agent that improves motility of the small intestines can help, which would be like magnesium, something called Atriphala, which is an Ayurvedic way of doing that. So there's some things you can do for that as well too. Okay. All right. Good luck to you, Joyce. I'm going to just show everyone 2 articles that you can look at regarding the yeast and SIBO. Put SIBO up here. So here's my article on SIBO. okay? And then in terms of yeast, there's, just show you, we can take a look at yeast right here. I have a whole chapter on yeast. This is the article you would look at to figure out if you might have too many yeast. This is the article you would look at about what do you do about too many yeast, okay? All right. Oh, and then in terms of the diet, I should have mentioned this. So the diet you would go on to try to prevent giving these bacteria the food, the starches and substances they need to grow or to ferment is something called a low FODMAP diet. So you would start with a low FODMAP diet for maybe a month or two to kind of decrease the nutrients that the bacteria are fermenting. And then after a month or two, you try to go back to a regular diet again, okay? So a FODMAP diet, low FODMAP diet is only meant to be a temporary tool. It's not meant to be a long-term tool, okay? All right. Good luck, Joyce. Hello, Mark. Let's see. What causes little black things to come out from everywhere when dealing with biofilm, morgellons, and mold exposure? So morgellons, everyone, is a skin condition that some people have that will give them a lot of sores on the skin, and also they'll have filaments that come out of these sores or filaments that come out of the skin. Under the microscope, it looks like these filaments are made of substance called keratin. We're not clear why that happens. A lot of these people with lesions and these filaments coming out, they've had biopsies. We don't see anything growing there like parasites or specific bacteria. But we do tend to see about 90% of people that have morgellons, the skin condition, will test positive for a tick-borne infection, whether it's Borrelia, Babesia, Bartonella. And we think of them, I think of morgellons as being a skin manifestation of Lyme. It's just another way that it shows up, basically. All right. And so they're made up of keratin. At least that's what we see. Why they happen, we don't know. All right. And the treatment is getting your tick-borne infections under control. Okay. All right. Good luck to you, Mark. So for those of you that want more information about morgellons, literally I have an article on that. I believe I got an article here. Yeah. I think this was a video art. No, there's art, written and video article here too. Okay, but you might want to take a look at this one. All right. Good luck to you, Mark. Hello, Joseph. Hold on here just a minute. All right, let's see. Hi, Joseph. Let's see. I have Babesia that showed up on a fish test, but will not show on IgM, IgG through IGenex. Any advice? Okay, so a fish test, everyone, is a microscope exam using a fluorescent agent that attaches to the genetic material of the germ. It gives us a way of directly seeing the germ, or we call it a direct test, okay? Versus IgM and IgG are antibody tests that we most often are going to detect using immunoblot methods these days. And it's an immune reaction. We're measuring, do you have an immune reaction against these germs? These days, I've had questions about this too, because I get these tests from IGenex, fish test positive, missing antibodies. And I've actually had a discussion with Dr. Shah, who runs the lab, because I said, I'm seeing this enough that it makes me wonder if these are false positive tests. I actually had a conversation with her about that. And she went through their whole validation process. And I actually have come to believe, and I've even had some listened in on conversations that Dr. Burrascano, who's one of her advisors, consultants, has said, and I think these are real. I think that the actual Babesia fish is real, okay? Now, but why they're not having antibodies, I don't know. It could be immune suppression caused by having the infection. The bigger question I've had to face, and there's been some discussions I participate in an iLads discussion group, is what do you do with the person that tests positive with a Babesia fish, but doesn't appear to have any symptoms. Do you need to do anything about that? And I think the general consensus is probably no, don't do anything about it. The immune system probably has it under control. Which leads to another question, which is whenever we treat tick-borne infections, do we actually eradicate every germ? And probably for the majority of people, we don't. What we probably are doing is we're knocking the germ load down enough that the immune system can keep it under control and deal with it, okay? So just having a positive FISH test without symptoms does not mean you need to do anything about it. And yes, we are seeing this pattern now where it appears the FISH may be a better way of picking it up in some people than the antibody testing. Okay? All right. Good luck to you. Let's see, Louise, what will help the gut lining? So if I've got, I wish there was more context around that, but I'll just talk briefly. So I like working when I've got people that have a gut lining that is either leading to injury that leads to leaky gut syndrome. So what happens is your gut, so inside your intestines, there's your poop, all right? Then there's one layer of cells that touch up against each other very tight without any gaps. Notice I don't have any gaps there, okay? These are cells, okay? And then under the cells is 60 to 70% of your immune cells in the whole body, lying right underneath these intestinal cells, and your blood vessels run under here that absorb nutrients, okay? Now, in healthy functioning intestines, oh, there's one other thing. These cells are covered by a mucousy layer called mucin, all right? All right, so you got inside of intestines with partially digested food. You've got a mucin layer. You have cells that touch up against each other very tightly. You got 60 to 70% of the body's immune system sitting here, and then you got blood vessels that run here, all right? In healthy functioning intestines, basically what happens is all the good bacteria and parasites and viruses that live in the intestines do a great job of helping to micro-digest food, so that corn is turned into its amino acids, it's broken down into its carbohydrates, and it's broken down into its fat, microscopic amounts. And those particles get absorbed through the mucin layer into cells, and they pass through the cells, and then they wind up hitting all your immune cells here. But because they've been filtered and they're very clean, they don't trigger these immune cells at all. All right. Now, if you happen to have yeast or maybe Lyme, this mucin layer can wear down. These cells here will plump up and pull apart, and now you got gaps. And this is leaky gut. Now, what happens in leaky gut is instead of having just amino acids that are not identified as being from corn, and fat that's not identified from being from corn, and carbs that are not identified from being from corn, you now get pieces of food coming through that look like corn. And it looks like, beans, if you happen to have beans. And they hit these immune cells down here, and they hit the mast cells, and they trigger an immune reaction. That's leaky gut, all right? So what we want to do to fix leaky gut, we want to repair this lining. We want to rebuild the mucin. We also want to get these cells to grow back together, okay? All right, so the way that I like to do that these days is I like working with a probiotic product to do that. And I want my probiotic product to have in it something called Akkermansia. Akkermansia is known as a keystone bacteria. It's a bacteria that lives in a lot of us. It declines as we age, but it's in there. And what its job is producing the mucin. Akkermansia helps produce the mucin layer I was telling you about, okay? All right. And it also releases a short-chain fatty acid called propionate, all right? And then I want my probiotic product to have other bacteria in it that will help produce short-chain fatty acids, including butyrate. Butyrate is a short-chain fatty acid that is used by these cells to heal up and grow back together, all right? So I like using a product that has Akkermansia and happens to have 4 short-chain fatty acid producers that lead to butyrate, all right? And a product that has that kind of a setup is a product called Metabolic Daily by Pendulum. It's Akkermansia with 4 butyrate producers, and I find it does a good job in healing up leaky gut. And I want you to know it's not approved. There's no science that proves that, but I find it supports the intestines, and I have seen in my practice that people's leaky gut can be repaired by being on that. It's going to take a few months to do it, though, at least, okay? And usually I'll recommend that people take it as 2 pills 1 time a day, all right? So let me just show you here real quick. So I'll just write it in here. This is the product here, okay? All right. And so what it's got in it, I'll try to find it's got Akkermansia, it's got something, a strain of Clostridium, a couple of strains of Clostridium, some Bifidobacterium, and something called Anaeroma butyricum. And these last ones are the ones that I call the butyrate producers, okay? All right. All right, Louise. Thanks for that question. Good luck to you. All right, everyone. That's it for me for tonight. I've enjoyed being with you here for the last hour and a half, and now I need to get on with my day. I hope you'll join me next week. We have another one of these scheduled next week, and then I think I'll be off for a week after that in terms of not doing a webinar. So I hope you join me again next week. Tomorrow morning, when you get the email from me saying that the recording is ready and providing you the summary, and inviting you to come out and be part of my practice and recommending various supplements you might want to use, please share that. Share that with people. I'm trying to reach as many people as I can to help them work with their doctors better, or to even navigate this illness on their own if they have to, or navigate it with me. But share that information so that people can get the help that you're getting, okay? I'd appreciate it if you join me in my mission to reach as many people as possible. So look for that email to come out somewhere around 10 o'clock in the morning, and you'll be able to click on a link to watch this on YouTube, and also you'll be able to sign up for next week's webinar as well too. All right. Good night, everyone.